Hello and welcome to Nithrania Game Club. My name is Branislav Berec and you're watching Game in a Nutshell, the series of videos designed to teach how to play various board games. Today we're going to learn how to play Glen More Chronicles II, the game designed by Matthias Kramer and published by Funtails. In Glen More Chronicles, each player is a clan leader of a Scottish clan from the early medieval ages. Players will try to expand their territory, to gain various resources, to trade these resources into victory points or money, or to convert them into whiskey, or to gain control of some special landmarks. Each player has one Scotsman on this rondel, and they will move their Scotsman to gain new tiles and to get the benefits from those tiles. Players can also gain some one-time help from other Scottish clans, and they will compete in 4 different areas, and they will score victory points based on how well they do in each area. The game contains several chronicles, and we will start with the basic setup, which applies to all of these chronicles. Each player chooses a color and receives the home territory tile with that color, all the clan markers and all the Scotsmen. Place one of those Scotsmen on the home territory tile. Place the rondel and the clan board in the middle of the table. Place this David Hume tile next to the clan board to the designated space. Place these landmark cards next to the game board or clan board, and if you want to save some space, place only these A cards on the table at the start of the game, and place the B cards on the table at the start of the B round, C cards at the start of the C round, and so on and so forth. Separate the tiles by the letter on their backside, shuffle each stack, and place them on the designated spaces on the game board. Then take this end tile and put it roughly somewhere in the middle of the D stack. To determine the initial player order, take one Scotsman of each player, shuffle them, and place one of them on any space on the rondel. This is the first player. Then place the second Scotsman on the next space in a clockwise direction. That's the second player. And then place the third or potentially the fourth piece in the same way. You may also place a die as a last piece. In a 2-player game, using a die is mandatory. In 3 or 4-player game, it's optional. It simulates another player in the game and shortens the game time. I will set up a 3-player game here to show you how the die works. Now, take these starting tiles and then place them randomly face up on the rondel in the next 5 spaces in a clockwise direction. Then fill in the remaining spaces with the tiles from the A stack, but leave this one last space empty. In 2 and a 3-player game, place one coin on each leftmost space on the market. In a 4-player game, you would leave the market empty. For the introductory game, you may also place the resource tokens on empty spaces in the market. The first player in the player order receives 5 coins, then the second player receives 6 coins, third player 7 coins, and fourth player would receive 8 coins. If you play with any chronicles, you have to apply setup changes and modifications as described in the rulebook for each chronicle. The game is played in 4 rounds as indicated by these tiles A, B, C and D. The turn order is not fixed in this game, it's always the player whose piece is in the last position who takes the turn. It's the player who has the piece just in front of this empty space. That player must take their piece and move it in a clockwise direction to any space on the rondel with the tile. The player may not move into space with another player's piece or with a die. Then the player has to take that tile and pay the cost if necessary and place it into their territory. The new tile is activated immediately together with all neighboring tiles. Finally, new tile or tiles are placed on a rondel, but again leave the last space empty. And that's it, that's the end of the turn. And now again the player who is in the last position would take their turn. When you place the last tile from the A stack on the rondel, the first round ends and the scoring takes place immediately. The second round ends when you place the last tile from the B stack on the rondel, and again scoring would take place immediately. And the same applies to the C stack and the third round. When this end tile from the D stack would be placed on a rondel, then when all players have moved on or over this end tile, the game would be over and the final scoring would take place. Since the turn order is not fixed, it may happen that one player will take several turns in succession if that player remains in the last position. So it may happen that at the end of the game, some players will have taken more moves than other players. Now I will go through the player's turn in more detail. When you move your piece onto a new tile, you must take that tile. If there is a cost in the top left corner, you have to pay that cost, otherwise you cannot take that tile. You can use the resources from your territory, and you can also use the coins from your personal reserve. If you don't have enough resources, you can buy the missing resources from the market. You have to pay the number of coins from the leftmost empty space, or in the introductory game the space will be covered with the resource token, but that space simply may not have any coins on it. So in this example, the wheat would cost me 2 coins. I would have to take those 2 coins from my personal reserve and place them on the corresponding space in the market. If there are no empty fields in the corresponding row, then I would not be able to buy that resource. In addition, you may never buy whiskey in the market, and you may never buy Scotsman, obviously. However, sometimes you may need to pay the Scotsman, as strange as it sounds, and to do that you have to have them in your territory and you simply remove them from the game. There are 2 types of tiles in the game. These are village tiles and these are persons. I will cover the village tiles first and then I'll come back to the persons tiles. To place a village tile into your village or territory, it has to be adjacent to one of the existing tiles. You cannot place it adjacent only diagonally. In addition, the tile has to be placed next to one of your Scotsmen in your territory. However, this time it could be even diagonal placement. When you place a river tile, is the tile with this river symbol, it has to be placed to the left or to the right of another existing river tile. Simply, you have to extend that river. The river tile may never be placed anywhere else, and similarly, no other than the river tile may be placed next to the river. Later in the game, you may be able to acquire the tiles with this golden symbol in the top right corner. They will let you overbuild existing tiles in your territory, but the types of those tiles have to match. So you can place this golden tile on top of the existing tile in your territory. You may never place these overbuilt tiles on their own like this. It's kind of an upgrade of existing tiles in your village. If you would like to overbuild the river tile, the overbuilt tile has to have a river type as well. So with this one, although there is a castle type, I would not be able to place it on top of this one because it doesn't have the river symbol. However, I can overbuild this tile. Then for the rest of the game, only the top tile will be used. However, you don't lose these one-time benefits from the overbuilt tiles, and I'm going to explain these one-time benefits right now. When you place a new tile and the tile has any one-time effects or benefits in the bottom left corner, you receive these bonuses immediately. With this tile, you would get 2 whiskey barrels into your personal supply. When you place a tile with the Scotsman, place a Scotsman on the newly acquired tile. When you place this landmark tile with this icon, find a corresponding landmark card with the same name, place it somewhere next to your player area, receive the immediate bonus, or in some cases you may have a permanent effect in the game, or sometimes you may have an endgame effect, and keep the card nearby because it will be important for the interim and endgame scoring. You can find the explanation of all those symbols in the rulebook. This one-time effect gives you 1 coin into your personal supply. After gaining the one-time benefit, if any, because in this case there is no one-time effect, you can activate the newly acquired tile and then all 8 surrounding tiles. So in this case, I can only activate this tile and these 2 neighboring tiles. You can activate those tiles in any order you want, however, each tile can only be activated once per turn. What the activation does is indicated in the bottom right corner. All activations are optional, so if you don't want to, you don't have to activate a tile. You can find the explanation of all those activations in the rulebook, but in general, you can get resources, you can convert resources into victory points, you can convert 1 barley for whiskey, you can move your Scotsman, or you can get victory points directly. When you gain resources, place them directly on the tile. When you convert barley into whiskey, you have to take that barley from one of your tiles, and then you will receive a whiskey cask into your personal reserve. Whiskey casks are not placed onto tiles. You have to keep them in your personal supply like coins. When you convert some resources into victory points, take the victory point tokens and keep them in your personal reserve as well. There is a limit of maximum 3 resource tokens on each tile. Any additionals are lost. That's why you can activate the tiles in any order you want. So in this case, I could first convert 1 barley into a whiskey cask, and then this tile could be activated and I would gain another barley. When you activate these tiles, which allow you to move your Scotsman, for each symbol, for each activation, you can move your Scotsman 1 space to the next adjacent tile. You can even move him diagonally for 1 activation. You can activate any Scotsman in your territory, so with 1 activation I can move 1 Scotsman over here, and with the next activation I could move another one to a different tile. When you overbuild a tile, all the resource tokens from the old tile will be placed on top of the new tile, and then you can activate the new tile and all the surrounding tiles. In this chapter, I'll talk about these persons. When you take such tile, you don't place it into your village. You have to keep that tile separately, and that means you will not activate any tiles in your territory. Instead, as this one-time effect indicates, you will place one of your clan markers onto the clan board. There, you will get a one-time benefit from another clan. You can place your marker on any empty clan anywhere on the clan board, but you have to pay the costs indicated on these roads. You calculate the cost either from the start field, and in this case there's no cost because there are no coin symbols on the road, or you can calculate the cost from any other marker on the clan board, and it could also be the marker of another player. So in this case, it would only cost me 1 coin to place my marker over here. If you wouldn't be able to pay the costs for placing your marker, you would not be allowed to place the marker onto that clan field. So after placing a marker in the chosen location, you get the one-time benefit of the corresponding clan. You can find the explanation of all these one-time benefits in the rulebook. We have already talked about buying resources from the market, and you can only buy resources if you don't have enough resources to pay for the newly acquired tile, or when you don't have enough resources for activation of your tiles. So in this example, if I wouldn't have enough resources for this activation, I could buy the cows or sheep in the market, or since I don't have any barley, I could buy the barley in a market and then exchange that barley for the whiskey cask, and so on and so forth, which means you may never buy resources to simply keep them in your supply. You can only buy them when you immediately pay that resource. However, you cannot just buy, you can also sell resources. You can sell resources anytime on your turn, even before you activate the tiles, for example to make the room for the newly generated resources, and to sell the resource token, take that token and return it to the general supply, or in the introductory game, return it to the market. Then take the rightmost stack of coins in the corresponding row. So this barley would bring me 3 coins into my personal supply. You can sell as many resources as you want during one turn, as long as there are coins in that resource row. You may never sell whiskey, and you may never sell Scotsman. The die acts as a virtual player in the game, which simply removes the tiles from the rondel when it's their turn. This shortens the game, especially in a 2 and a 3 player game. When the die is in the last position, which means it's the die's turn, roll the die and then move it from its original position that many spaces forward, but skip any spaces with player pieces, as if these spaces wouldn't even exist. So in this example, the die would move 2 spaces and simply remove this tile from the game. If the die would land on a tile with the chronicle icon, move the die to the next space. Again, the space must not be occupied by a player piece, and the tile must not be a chronicle tile. Then remove the tile where the die landed. If the die would land on the end tile, it would not remove that tile. At the end of the turn, add the tile from the current stack to the rondel, and don't forget to keep the last space empty. Then the player whose piece is next to this empty space takes their turn. If all players moved their pieces over a tile or tiles without taking them, remove those tiles from the game and put them onto the discard pile. Then, when adding tiles to the rondel, you may need to place more than one tile. Again, keep the last space always empty. There are 4 scoring rounds in the game. At the end of the turn, when you place the last tile from the A stack on the rondel, the first scoring round takes place. Each scoring round works in the same way. All players compare their achievements in these 4 scoring areas. Now, I have prepared this overview for the sake of explanation of the scoring. The actual situation in each player's territory would definitely look differently. So, for the scoring purposes, players compare number of their Scotsmen on their home castle tile. It's the castle tile with this banner on the river. Then they compare number of landmark cards they have acquired, number of person tiles they have acquired, and also number of whiskey casks. Now, in each category, let's start with the Scotsman, compare your number to the lowest number in that category. Then calculate the difference. So yellow player has 2 more Scotsmen than the player with the lowest number of them. Then score the victory points based on this table, which is depicted on the rondel. If the difference is 1, the player scores 1 victory point. If the difference is 2, the player will score 2 victory points, and so on and so forth. And if the difference is 5 or more, the player would score 8 victory points. So the yellow player would score 2 victory points because the difference between his number of Scotsmen on the home castle tile and the player with the lowest number is 2. Red player has the difference 1, and that player would score 1 victory point. Players are awarded these victory point tokens. When comparing landmarks, red player has 2 landmark cards, and these 2 players don't have any of them. So again, the difference is 2, and the red player would gain additional 2 victory points. Since yellow player has 1 card, the difference is 1, and he would get 1 victory point. Now, looking at the whiskey casks, the purple player has 6 whiskey casks, and these players don't have any of them. So the difference is 6, and based on the table, the player would score 8 victory points. Now, the blue player has 3 whiskey casks, the difference to 0 is 3, and those are 3 victory points. Person's tiles are scored in the exact same way. When you place the last tile from the B stack on the rondel, perform the second round scoring, and then when you place the last tile from the C stack on the rondel, perform the third scoring round. Final scoring takes place at the end of the game. Somewhere in the middle of this D stack, there is this end tile. When you place it on the rondel, the game continues normally, and then when you move over this tile, take the tile where you landed, carry out your turn in the normal standard way, and then your game is over. If players wish so, they can also end their movement on the end tile. In that case, their game is over immediately, they don't finish their turn because they don't take any tile. And actually, any number of players can end their game on the end tile. And when all players have moved on or over that tile, the game is over. Perform the final 4th round scoring, and then players will have a chance to gain or lose some additional victory points. First, compare the size of your territory, which means the number of tiles you have in your village, to the player with the smallest number of tiles in their territory. Then calculate the difference, and for each extra tile you have to lose 3 victory points. In this example, yellow player has 10 tiles, red player has only 7 tiles, which is the smallest territory in the game. So that's 3 tiles extra, which means 3 times 3 victory points, which yellow player has to lose. Then each player gains 1 victory point for each coin they have, and some landmark cards with this symbol also award victory points at the end of the game. Then the player with the most points is the winner. The game is called Glen More Chronicles because it contains chronicles which are basically expansions to the base game. Each chronicle adds a new gameplay elements, but if you're new to this game, maybe you should play the first game without these chronicles and then start adding them to the base game, first only using one chronicle at a time, and then you can also combine multiple chronicles in one game. Each chronicle page describes the changes in the setup and also other rules and modifications to the base game. So that's how you play Glen More Chronicles II. If you would have any questions or comments, please put them into the comment sections below. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. If you like the show, please subscribe. My name is Branislav Berec, you've been watching Game in a Nutshell, and hope to see you next time.